Yes.
Have you been coming to this group?
I've seen one before this. That's all. Two.
Looks like we have a good group.
There it is. Totally fills the place. Yeah. I'm sorry I'll be in effect. I had to come.
Me too.
Yeah.
Right. This is the first one I've come to, but I have to come to see her.
Yes, exactly.
It is on. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to give a sermon. I'm sure you're relieved to know that. I am still not going to give you a sermon, but I am going to speak using this microphone. And I think if I stand here, how's that? So I learned that from Professor Basevich. He stood to the side and he was well heard. So it's really my pleasure to welcome all of you. My name is Gary Jacobson. I serve as president for the last 2 years of the Middle East Forum of Falmouth, and with a very capable group of friends and co-workers. And welcome Dr. Faryal Khan, who is not only an eminent speaker, but a neighbor. And while we've invited people from Texas and from Princeton, New Jersey, it's really great to welcome someone from across the street. So we get to two for one here. We get to hear somebody with deep experience and also a neighbor. So thank you for coming. And for a formal introduction, I'm not going to be the person that does that. That's going to be Professor Mark Schulman, who is one of our board of overseers, or members of our steering committee. And Mark is somewhere in the immediate vicinity. Some of you know Mark. He has lived in Woods Hole for a period of time, and summers here and winters in a little island off of Puerto Rico. So already you know that he is a wise person, and he is an internationalist. Mark has lived and worked in 5 countries, knows the bureaucracy, and is capable in many realms. So first, we're grateful to him because his work as a scientist, as a research professor at emeritus at the University of Toronto, is one of the building blocks of the current immunology that is now in the forefront of cancer treatment. So this is a debt that science owes to Professor Schulman. And in addition, he knows his way around government. So when it came to, and also other bureaucracy. So when it came to getting our not-for-profit 501c3, and when it came to building a nice website, it was Professor Schulman who did this, and we thank him for that. So the only other thing I want to say to you is, I don't know how many of you do not have a sheet like this, but the first question I have is, how many of you are new, have not been here either last week or ever? Okay, so welcome. For those of you who are new, who were not here last week, if you would just keep your hands up, and if somebody, Fletcher or someone, member of our committee could pass out these forms, we'd appreciate it. And for the rest of you, the website that I mentioned is easy to remember. It's Middle East Forum of Falmouth, abbreviated as MEFF, at world, world.com. So without further ado, we welcome to you, and I introduce Professor Mark Schulman.
Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Faryal, today's speaker, who's going to talk about education in the Gulf states of the Middle East, the Gulf Arab states of the Middle East. So Dr. Khan has had a long and diversified career in education. She began her professional life in her native Pakistan as a teacher in special needs education. She's currently a visiting practitioner at Harvard's School of Education, where for the past year her research has focused on the values, skills, and attitudes that learners need to live together peacefully and to resolve conflicts. In the intervening 25 years between her time in Pakistan and her current position at Harvard, Dr. Khan has worked all over the world, and much of her career has been with UNESCO, where her responsibilities focused on how to improve education quality and access. As part of UNESCO, she has provided technical analysis and advice on educational reform, policy, planning in 25 countries in Asia, the Middle East, the Caribbean and Pacific Islands. 25 or more countries than I could name. Of particular relevance for our lecture today, for 6 years, the years 2011 to 2018, Dr. Khan was a program specialist for education at UNESCO in Doha, Qatar. In this capacity, she led a team that examined the educational systems in the 6 Gulf cooperative countries, that is, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. 6 years of studying 6 countries, and she's going to distill all that into the next 40 minutes. As Gary mentioned, when Faryal gets up here, some of you will think she looks familiar, and there is a simple explanation because she and her husband, Dr. Louis Carlton-Foss, are the new owners of what used to be called Fisher House across the street. Okay, so on to the lecture. Education in the Gulf Arab states, promises and perils. Let's welcome Dr. Faryal Khan.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your words of welcome. And yes, we are now living in Woods Hole, and it's such a pleasure to be here today with you because we are part of this community now, and it's really an honor to have the opportunity to have this exchange with you today. I really want to thank Mark and also Peggy for reaching out to us and inviting us to have this presentation. So when Mark invited me to speak about education in the Arab states, I was a bit hesitant. I was thinking, this is the Middle Eastern Forum, you are all political analysts, or you're probably expecting a presentation which is more, looking at the politics and other issues. And I was thinking, would education even be of interest to this specific group of audience? And then I thought about it, and we all know, Mark just told us about the Gulf states, and these are oil economies. These countries have a lot of oil and natural gas. And with all the money that's come in, there's been a lot of investment in education. And these countries are moving from being oil economies to becoming knowledge-based economies. So education really becomes, center stage. It becomes a lever, and it becomes a driver for change, for social development, economic development, political awareness. And so I thought, to get a full picture of what is really happening in the Middle East and also in particular the Gulf states, it would be useful to have insights on how education is playing out in this region. So I'm going to just share with you that like Mark said, I was in Qatar. My husband, Louis Faryal, who's here with me today, And we lived in Qatar for 6 years. And while I was there, I was supporting UNESCO's education program and leading education in all the 6 Gulf states, and also initially Yemen. Then the political situation in Yemen declined, and I wasn't able to even travel to Yemen, and we didn't have a country office there at that time. So I was focusing more and more on the Gulf states. So I conducted a study, which is a pretty, it's a lot of work that went into this study. And we were able to conduct case studies in each of the 6 Gulf states, focusing on education. And also then we did a cross-case analysis. So I'm going to share with you some of the key findings from this study. And I hope we can have an exchange following this presentation. So as I begin, I would just like to ask you, do you know about the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations, does anybody in this room know about the Sustainable Development Goals? Would you just like to say something about it? Or I don't want to put you on the spot, but anything from your experience?
Well, working with health systems in developing countries, there are sustainable goals with regard to infection control, with regard to where we want to see economic development in various low-income countries. And those sustainable goals have been actually progressing forward very, very well, and we have made tremendous progress in that area over the last 15 years.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. So I'm going to just give you a quick outline of my presentation. I'm going to frame it within the work that 190 plus countries advocated for a development agenda, and the Middle Eastern countries were part of this global dialogue that took place. And in 2015 at the United Nations General Assembly, these countries agreed to, they committed themselves that they would have equitable access to basic education, health, gender equality, no poverty, no hunger. So there are these 17 goals that, and they also include climate change. So these countries in the Gulf states as well they committed, they were part of this global dialogue, and they committed to this global mandate for development. And then when they came back, they wanted to implement those policies in their own countries, but they wanted the agenda to be country driven and informed by their own national priorities. So we conducted this research study focusing more on educational issues, but basically to fit the larger mandate of the Sustainable Development Goal 4, which focuses on education. So I just wanted to build that bridge and the link. So the work that we did was an effort to provide evidence-based policy and to develop strategic programs that would help meet the Sustainable Development Goals pertaining to education in the 6 Gulf states. So I'm going to share a little bit about the study with you, and then we'll talk about the findings, the main findings, and then what are some of the policy implications for the education systems. So as our friend here just mentioned, there are 17 goals that the Gulf states committed to in 2015. The first one is about no poverty, no hunger. Number 2, number 3 looks at health for all, and I guess that's the goal that you've been contributing towards. And I've been focusing on the education goal, which is goal number 4. And then there's gender equality, clean water, climate change, employment for all, peace, justice, and partnership. So I mean, this is just to give you the overall framework within which the study was conducted. So if you go to the next slide, the 4th goal, which focuses on education, focuses on ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all in each of these 6 Gulf states. So this is a global goal for Education 2030, but this goal was the 6 Gulf states committed to this, And then they came back to their countries, and I was there as a policy advisor working with them. How are they going to operationalize it? So even though this slide just basically shows that even though goal number 4 is at the center of our work, this goal is related to some of the other roles which are part of the Sustainable Development Framework, including your goal on health and well-being, because you need good health of the learners. My husband, he was working at that time he's a development biologist, and he was working in the health sector with Qatar for some years, and child obesity, diabetes, and health issues are a big issue there. So even though I will today focus on goal 4 for the sake of this discussion, this goal is linked with several others like climate change, education for sustainable environments, gender equality, and so forth. So before I come to the Gulf states, there's another thing I wanted to just put on the table for you for education and the work that we did in the Gulf states. So these countries have been very concerned because despite very heavy investments in education, the learning outcomes are very low. So when you compare the results, in some of the international assessments, some of you may be familiar with TIMSS or PEARLS or PISA, some of these international assessments. I don't know if there are any educators in this room, but these countries are participating in international assessments as well as national level assessments at school level, and they get a lot of data on learning, but there were two concerns. A, they were really coming at the end of the run, when at the bottom of the ladder, when the results came out. These countries are not performing very well, and the learners are not learning as they should be, because these countries have very beautiful schools. I see in the room some distinguished participants and friends who have lived in the Middle East, and they will see that maybe we can have this discussion. The schools are really beautiful. Some of the schools have high level of resources. They have good teachers. They bring in teachers from all over the world to teach in these schools. So there are issues, of course, but money is being pumped into the education system, but they're not delivering results. So they have all this data, and then they don't know how to utilize this data and analyze this data to inform policies and strategies. So our role was then to look at some of the data that is available to us through the national assessments and through some of the international assessments, which focus on learning of the students and how teaching and learning takes place in classrooms, and then come up with some lessons for policy makers so that they can make informed decisions. And they wanted to strengthen transparency and accountability of the school systems. So just to give you the feeling of like national learning assessments. So in America you're much more advanced, but in the Middle East, if you look, it's the last line, which is the green line, and most of the Arab states together. This is not just the 6 Gulf states, but about 19 or 20 countries in the Middle East. There are not many national learning assessment systems that are robust and rigorous, and which can be used to compare data across countries. So there is an issue here when it comes to national level assessments and how kids are learning. So these were the kind of issues that the country was grappling with, and so which led to us having the study. If we go to the next slide. In the cross-national learning assessments, for example, the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development amongst the more developed countries of the world, they have a program for PISA, which is a program for international student assessment. The International Education assessment. IEA has the TIM study, which looks at math scores and science scores, and these are very rigorous surveys that are conducted. Kids take these exams globally under conditions that are equal, so that the results can be comparable. So when these studies, the results come out, the Gulf states were doing really poorly, which led us to, we took a step back and we said, learning is an issue. There is a learning crisis in this context. A lot of money is being pumped into education, but the kids are not learning. And by the way, I'll tell you later, but I'll just give you a clue here. Girls are outperforming boys. So there is what is happening in girls' schools, what is happening in boys' schools. So we felt that the unique context of the Gulf states, because these countries are oil economies, they have a lot of money, they want to move towards being knowledge-based economies. So we felt it was a good time for us to look at the education systems, look at the unique context of the Gulf states, but with particular specific attention to the quality conundrum, and then look at specific issues like language or instructions. And I don't know, like some of you may be aware of this, but we lived in Qatar. Louis and I were living in Qatar, and the total population of Qatar is, grosso modo, I'm not giving you exact figures, but about 2 million. But the citizens of Qatar are only 250,000. So the citizens are actually 1/8 of the total population of the country. So there are these kind of issues where you have a lot of expats coming in, and the country feels, of course, responsible for providing education to the kids who are coming from overseas, but then they also want to make sure that their kids get very good education as well. So it's a very, very unique context. So we said, let's look a little bit more closely. So I raised some funds, I put in a grant proposal, and we were able, this is as part of my work at UNESCO. So I'm sharing the findings of a study, which is, which was conducted when I was working at UNESCO up to 2018. So we looked at the research, which was a critical analysis of the performance of education systems in the 6 Gulf states, and we looked in particular at learning outcomes in grades 4 and grade 8. And why we cut off at grade 4 and grade 8 is because these are the times when kids are either transitioning to another level, or this is the age group that participates in the international assessments. So we needed to have comparable data across countries, and which we could use. So we in particular focused on gender parity issues. And then we looked at some of the what are the recommendations that come out of the evidence that was emerging. So we looked at some of the what are the learning outcomes specifically for grades 4 and 8 in terms of maths, science, reading and literacy. And then we wanted to look at the differences between learning outcomes in girls' schools and boys' schools across districts, content areas like math, science and reading, and we wanted to look at differences across grade levels. And we then said, okay, we will then hopefully we'll have some understanding of what the issues are, and then what should be the priorities for setting a future agenda, a renewed agenda for education with the focus on quality, for Education 2030 that the countries should be looking at. So I'm not going to go into the methodology, but we had the case study analysis. So we had cases for each country. We utilized a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods, and then access to the schools depended on the countries that we were working with. And we did very extensive documents analysis. We did a very rigorous literature review. We looked at the evaluations that existed, and the countries had just finished the National Education for All reports, which I had actually helped them prepare, which charted progress in education from in education indicators from the year 2000 to the year 2013. So we looked at those reports, very rigorously conducted the evaluations, and then we said, okay, these are areas where we need to collect additional new data, and we developed surveys, interviews, tests. We conducted focus groups discussions, held observations to triangulate the data, and we met with selected government officials. And then we used quantitative and qualitative analysis methods based on each study, and the details are all available in the all the instruments and everything is available in this case study. So if you look at the next slide, this is basically talking about the theoretical frameworks that we were using, and if we click again, so after the literature review, we collected the data, analyzed it, and we had an extensive communication strategy, and we were looking also at the differences we were focusing on the actual teaching, and I'm sorry if some of you can't see very clearly, but we were focusing on the actual teaching and learning that takes place in the classroom, and we were looking at the prescribed curriculum and then how it is implemented in the classrooms. And we also met with a lot of teachers participated. If you move to the next slide, we collected data at the policy level, at the organizational level, through universities, education partners and civic communities, and also primarily at the school level, where we were able to, the teachers participated in the studies, principals and students, so we got permissions. I'm not going to go into each case study, case, but just to give you an idea of the sampling was done with the National Statistics Offices, the education ministries and the National Statistics Offices helped us identify the number of schools that needed to be part of the study. So in Kuwait, which is a very small country, we had about 22 schools, and in each of the school districts. So on the left you have each of the school districts, and so it was very rigorous data collection strategy. In Qatar, where we took data from 28 schools, 161 teachers participated in the study, and 796 kids responded to our, they took the tests. We gave them tests, and this was in every municipality in Qatar. So we tried to have, we selected schools by municipality, by governorate. So this is all the instruments we use. Maybe I can skip these, the quantitative and the qualitative. So this is where I'm going to now talk about the regional trends analysis, and then after this we are going to move towards more specific findings. So, I mean, again I'm giving you a clue. There is a learning crisis, which we were seeing. It was really emerging. So I worked with OECD. I had partners who were, this was a study, we were a small team of about 5 people maximum based in Qatar, but I was working with like some of the top educators globally. I had people from the Global Education Monitoring Report based in UNESCO Paris. I was working with specialists in education and specialists in educational statistical data at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD Paris. I was working with IEA, which is based in Germany. So we put together, and the UNESCO Institute of Statistics based in Montreal. So we put together a team of advisors, and every country, there was a national team of researchers and specialists with whom we were working. So we really had an advisory group, and we worked with partners across the world who could actually advise us on like rigorous analytics and data, help us gather the data. So if you look now, you'll see the data is old. It's from, this one is from 2011, because when I conducted the study, that was the latest PEARLS result. These exams are held every 4 years. So this was at that time the latest results that we had. of a total of 45 countries that participated in the International Reading Literacy Study, United Arab Emirates, this is Dubai, Abu Dhabi, these are the Emirates, very rich country. They ranked 40 out of 45. So they were really at the bottom of the ladder. Saudi Arabia came 41 out of 45. Qatar 43 out of 45. Oman 44 out of 45. Morocco, which is not in the Gulf states but was in the another country from the Middle East that participated in the study, they came 40. They were the last ones. So the Middle East, the Arab states were really at the bottom of the ladder when it came to reading and literacy. In mathematics, we have the disaggregated data from grade 4 and grade 8. Again, of a total of 49 countries that participated in grade 4 and 39 countries that participated for grade 8 mathematics tests, you'll see that again the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait are really at the bottom of the ladder, and so are Jordan and Morocco. So it's really, this is data. This is not subjective analysis. This is how the kids are performing in the exams. Can we move forward? So there were observed challenges when it came to translating the investments in education. So the heavy investments that these countries are, they're pumping in money in the education systems, but then it's not really translated to improve learning. And if we look at the percentage of students that were meeting the minimum proficiency level in mathematics in grade 8, for example, in the TIMSS examination, which is a global assessment for mathematics, in Saudi Arabia, only 34% of grade 8 students reach the minimum proficiency level. The rest don't. So it's pretty, they need to pull their, if they want to move towards a knowledge-based economy, we need to do a bit better in the education system. If you go to the next slide, we also looked at the large gender gaps in the learning outcomes. So we took the gender parity index for mathematics proficiency in grade 8 for the TIMSS exam again. And again, the largest disparities were observed for boys in the GCC country. In Oman, almost 60% of the girls reached the minimum proficiency levels in mathematics, but only 45% of the boys reached minimum proficiency levels. And Oman, by the way, is not as rich as the other countries. I mean, they are not as rich as Oman amongst the Gulf states is, they don't have as much resources, but they're doing better in some ways in education. And they are really leading in education for girls. I mean, they're really doing great work for girls' education in Oman. Can we move to the next slide? So, we also saw large, the gender gaps in learning outcomes continues. For example, in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, we juxtapose the data. On the left we have Qatar, on the right we have the United Arab Emirates. Blue is the column for girls' performance in reading, and on the right is the orange red is the boys, and girls are outperforming boys. Again, when we look at the socioeconomic status of, it has a significant impact on the student's achievement. So the blue dots are kids from low socioeconomic status families, while the red dots are from kids from the highest quintile, the wealthier kids. And there is a gap in each country, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. There is a gap between kids, and it's a very significant gap in kids. So kids who are from marginalized families or from poor households don't have the same access as well as results in terms of quality of education. So there was a significant difference. We looked at the findings, and then we clustered the findings according to various themes, and we looked at the learning outcomes of the students. For example, in maths, we looked at the teachers' self-efficacy and how the teachers feel about their own competence and their impact. And we also looked at instructional design and strategies. And there was a significant gap of around 5 points in the group mean score between the females and male scores across districts. So there's a gender gap, and the females are outperforming the boys in all the 6 districts in Kuwait. This one is specific. So now I'm sharing with you data from specific studies. The independent t-tests on teachers' responses across the 3 subjects. So teachers felt more comfortable teaching reading, but when it came to teaching maths and science, teachers felt more comfortable at the grade 4 level, but as they went up the grade levels, their own comfort level in teaching the subject material went down. So the teachers themselves weren't comfortable with the maths and science and the high level of maths and science that is now being taught today. Because let's remember this. These are teachers who are coming often from Jordan, Egypt, and other more developing contexts in the Middle East. And they come to these rich countries. They come as teachers to earn more, for different reasons. And these teachers, the school systems in their own home countries was not so advanced. And in Qatar and UAE today in the schools, they are using pretty advanced curriculum, and which is coming in from England or United Kingdom or other parts of the world. And most of the teachers, their own self-efficacy went down in teaching these. They were more comfortable with teaching reading, but not so much with maths and science. And that is a problem. Using gender as a grouping variable, we saw that in maths there were statistically significant differences across gender, boys and girls. So especially in terms of teachers' efforts, teachers in the girls' schools were actually, they felt there was more of an effort on their parts as compared with the boys' schools. Their own self-efficacy was stronger in the girls' school as compared with the boys' school, and even in the impact of teaching. And we use survey instruments and questions that are very rigorous, which IEA is using for TIMSS and maths as well. So these are instruments, we adapted them for use in this particular context. So, and teachers' expectations of the students is not very high, and there is a problem there. In science, for example, except for the impact of teaching on student performance, in science there were no statistically significant differences across gender in other areas except for the impact of teaching on student performance. And there the girls were doing better than boys. So, that's a lot of data I've shared with you. And I don't know if you have a question here before I move on, if you want to take a pause, or should I just continue? Okay. But I just want to give a pause because I've just shared a lot of data. So I'll take one question.
I was wondering if there's a language problem, because you said it's 200,000
So language is an issue. First of all, Arabic, there is a written Arabic, and then there is the classical Arabic which is written, and then the way the kids speak with each other and families speak at home, it is completely different. And I think some of our friends who have lived in the Middle East can tell us more about that. So there is a disconnect with the Arabic that they study in school. It is a classic formal Arabic, and then what they speak at home is like a slang or you know, they have the Emirati dialects or the Qatari dialect, which is very different. So, so first of all, yes, there is language is an issue. Secondly, when it comes to the expats, the French are sending the kids to the French schools. The Americans have an American school there. So the kids from the expat community, they do have choices. So the public school system doesn't necessarily absorb all the expat kids that are coming in. They are, and then for the less developed countries like mine, which is Pakistan, where I come from, the Pakistanis, the Indians, the Bangladeshis, the embassies, they set up schools for the kids, and these, the curriculum is in the national language. So the kids going to the Pakistani school they'll follow the national curriculum of a 4th grader or an 8th grader in Pakistan. And why is that? Because a lot of the expats who are coming in, they're coming for 2 years or 4 years, nobody's living there forever. Getting a citizenship in these countries is not easy. You don't become a citizen. I mean, in America, if you live here for a certain amount of time, you can become a citizen. But in most of these countries, it's very hard to actually become a citizen. And there are people over 3 generations even, they may be living there, but getting a citizenship is very hard. So most people, they come and work for 4 years and go back. So when the kid comes with the family, they'll go to their own national system, a Bangladeshi school or a Philippine school or an Indian school, and then at the end when the father's or the mother's work finishes, they'll go back to their own country or elsewhere, but they leave the system. And then the public school system takes its own, mostly it is the citizens, and then of course there are some spots that are opened up for others as well. But language, yes, is an issue.
One quick question. Are the schools segregated by sex?
Yes, girls' schools and boys' schools, except unless you go to an American school or a French school or the British school, and these schools have co-education. So, if you'll permit, I'll keep moving. And so basically some of the key lessons are that there is a lack of evidence on how international and national assessments are actually being used by the decision makers at local and national levels. And all this data that is present and available, it's not being A, analyzed, and B, it's not being utilized to actually shape the programs and change the teaching and learning practice. So there needs to be more evidence-based programming and then budgeting that is linked with the programs. So the budget needs to, we need to invest where learning matters. We don't want to give kids expensive gifts if they win a competition. We want the teaching and learning in the classroom to improve, because a lot of money is being spent, but the question is, are we investing where the quality will improve? I think it's on a slideshow or something, the slides keep, yeah. So, and informing teachers and schools, often the teachers at the school levels, the principals and the teachers, they often don't even have access to this information. They may have access to information about their own school, but at the national level statistics or how their country is performing globally,